Thanks, Jen. There are reports of illegal cluster bombs and vacuum bombs being used by the Russians. If that's true, what is the next step of this administration, and is there a red line for how much violence will be tolerated against civilians in this manner that's illegal and potentially a war crime?
It would be. I don't have any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime. Obviously, there are a range of international fora that would assess that. So certainly we would look to that to be a part of that conversation.
I stand here before you as Vice President of the United States, proud to make the announcements we are making today, which are historic, and I am very clear. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. And look, I like to say I eat no for breakfast, so I get it, right?
President Biden said on day one of his administration that the United States would revitalize our alliances and re-engage with the world to meet the great challenges of our time. Thanks in large part to President Biden's leadership. As I mentioned, because we've seen all of these reports on the provision of cluster munitions to Ukraine, I will leave it to the Pentagon to make a formal announcement later this afternoon for the next drawdown package.
Tara. Hi, General Rudder. Thanks for doing this. The AP is reporting that President Biden has decided to provide cluster munitions to Ukraine. How has the Pentagon been able to address concerns about dud rates that can put civilians, children at risk? And how will these munitions help Ukraine in this stage of the fight?
Sure. So in terms of DPICMs, I don't have anything to announce today, Tara. As you know, that is something that is under consideration. I will say that we have multiple variants of DPICMs in our stocks, and the ones that we are considering providing would not include older variants with dud rates that are higher than 2.35%. We are aware of reports out there from several decades ago that indicate that certain 155 millimeter DPICMs have higher dud rates. So we would be carefully selecting rounds with lower dud rates for which we have recent testing data.
And given that the Secretary is headed to Vilnius soon, what sort of outreach has he had with NATO partners to address their concerns about the use of cluster munitions in this conflict?
Again, I don't have anything specific to announce today in terms of DPICMs. If and when the decision is made, certainly we'll provide more information as appropriate. I will say this in terms of our allies and our partners. Unity continues to remain very strong when it comes to supporting Ukraine and providing them with the capabilities that they need to be effective on the battlefield.
But has he had any conversations with some of the Ukraine group partners, NATO allies?
Yeah, I don't have anything to read out today.
Russia has been using cluster munitions since the start of this war to attack Ukraine. Russia's been using cluster munitions with high dud or failure rates of between 30 and 40%. In this environment, Ukraine has been requesting cluster munitions in order to defend its own sovereign territory. The cluster munitions that we would provide have dud rates far below what Russia is providing, not higher than 2.5%. And third, we are closely coordinating with Ukraine as it has requested these munitions. Ukraine is committed to post-conflict demining efforts to mitigate any potential harm to civilians, and this will be necessary regardless of whether the United States provides these munitions or not, because of Russia's widespread use of cluster munitions. We will have to continue to assist Ukraine with demining efforts no matter what, given the significant use of cluster munitions already perpetrated by Russia. So the bottom line is this. We recognize that cluster munitions create a risk of civilian harm from unexploded ordnance. This is why we've deferred the decision for as long as we could. But there is also a massive risk of civilian harm if Russian troops and tanks roll over Ukrainian positions and take more Ukrainian territory and subjugate more Ukrainian civilians because Ukraine does not have enough artillery. That is intolerable to us.
Hi, I'm Prashant here from Global News. Thank you for your care and support.
Thanks for doing this. On cluster munitions, you talked about the dud rate. John Kirby in December of 2022 also talked about, that the U.S. as a policy has concerns about, cluster munitions being used. Besides the dud rate, what are the other concerns that the U.S. would have if these munitions are transferred to Ukraine? Thanks.
Well, I appreciate the question, Jim. Again, I don't want to get out ahead of any potential announcement. I think that, if and when a decision is made, we'll have more to say on that.
Great, thank you. Some Democrats have said that giving cluster munitions to Ukraine undermines America's reputation as a human rights defender around the world. What's the White House response?
I mean, we don't believe that it undermines our reputation of being human rights defenders. This is something that we say all the time, right? When it comes to human rights, when it comes to having those conversations with either our partners or other heads of state, the president is never shies away from having those conversations. Look, Jake said this when he was here. We have to remember what's happening in Ukraine, right? Ukraine is defending itself. It's defending its freedom. It's defending its sovereign territory. And that is what we're doing here. We're making sure that they are able to do that. This is a war that Russia started. This is an aggression by Russia. And so we have seen bipartisan support in what we're trying to do in helping Ukraine, fighting for their freedom. And I think we're continuing to see that. But as it comes to human rights, the president will always be very clear and have very honest conversations with our partners and other heads of states across the world.
Thank you. Jake Sullivan mentioned that President Biden took this decision about cluster munitions after consulting with allies. So I wanted to see if you could provide some details about if Germany was consulted or Poland, what countries were.
I'm not going to go into each country that was consulted, but clearly those are some of our allies, correct? And so I'm just not going to get into details, but certainly the president did consult our allies and partners here. When you look at the last 16 months of this war that we saw that this Russia aggression in Ukraine, we have seen a NATO alliance that has been strengthened because of the leadership of this president. We've seen bipartisanship here. We have seen Europe come together, the West come together to make sure that we do everything that we can to help Ukraine fight for its freedom. And so that is really important. We got to remember what's at stake here. What's at stake is democracy. And so the president is going to do everything that we can to help the people of Ukraine fight for those freedoms. Go ahead.
We've talked a lot about assistance in terms of the security side today, but should we also expect any commitments on the humanitarian side with next week, either to those in exile in Lithuania or refugees in Poland?
That's a very good question, Zolan. I don't have anything to preview for you at this time, but certainly humanitarian aid is something that we have provided in the past and have certainly put that as an important assistant to provide. I just don't have anything that's going to come out of the NATO summit this week. I'm sure that we will be providing information as we go through the days. I just don't have anything for you at this time.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.